Hi, welcome to BikeGremlin YouTube channel, and here today, after several beers, we will try to replace worn disc brake pads. And you can see probably that these have very little meat on them. I'm not sure if camera can catch it, but we have new supersonic, super expensive with cooling fins Shimano brake pads, and we will try to replace these. Now, when you are choosing brake pads, some discs don't work well with metallic or sintered brake pads, and you need to make sure that your discs can work with those if you are buying them. While resin or organic pads are a bit softer, they wear quickly, they don't break as well, especially when it's heated and you have longer descents and you brake a lot more, but they are a bit less likely to cause any screeching noises, and they work with both discs that are made for those pads and those for metallic. And they also have a bit better initial bite, but for everything else, especially for front brakes, I believe it's better to have metallic brake pads and discs that can use metallic brake pads. Now, after long dribble, that will get to business, and the tools we will need. We'll need this to move the brake pistons a bit further out, because when we put the new brakes in, they are a bit thicker, so we don't want to get anything stuck. And this is best done when you have old pads, so you don't worry about scratching or damaging them, and you just, let's see, just slide this in and try to push the pads away, the pistons all the way, to have them all the way retracted. And you definitely don't want to pull the brake lever when you're doing this, of course. Okay, I think this is enough. And when it comes to replacing, some disc brake calipers are designed for the brake pads to go out on the bottom end, and on some it's on the top. You can usually see that by the way it is designed, and it's usually fairly obvious. Also, many have some sort of retaining pin or similar pattern to prevent this like a sort of a holder that holds the brake pads in place, to prevent it from unscrewing or just sliding out, depending on which type. In this case, it's screwed in and it has this retaining pin. So in order to replace the pads, we will first need to remove this retaining pin. This can go by hand relatively easily, I hope. Okay, yes. If not, you can use those needle pliers. And we got this, put it aside. And here it's flat screwdriver. We'll need a flat screwdriver. I usually go with the thickest one that can fit, to avoid any damage. All right, I'm unscrewing it. And there's a trick: when you unscrew some screw, you can hear it when you're exerting pressure and unscrewing it. You can hear it pop once all the threads are out. I'm not sure if it can be caught on camera, the sound. Hear that? That means you've unscrewed it. Okay, now I'm sliding it out to show what I'm doing. Okay, here it goes. And now we can remove the brake pads. In this model, I think they go on the bottom end, pushing them out. Okay, now you can see how little brake pad material there's left, and we don't want the metal against brake discs, because it will wear them out very quickly and make a screeching noise. Okay, now the old ones are out. What I would do now is try to clean this up a bit, just to feel better. If you have problems with brake pistons not sliding in and out uniquely or evenly, then you need to push one of the pistons out while holding the other one in place with a tool like this, and then use some small brush or an old toothbrush with the brake cleaner, or with the brake fluid that is used in the brake. So this one uses mineral brake fluid, hydraulic, so we would use that. And for dot brake fluid brakes, we would use dot brake fluid to clean this. When you push it out by working the lever, then brake lever, then clean the outsides. But these brakes are performing rather well, and so there's no need to do that. We'll just here clean it a bit, and I don't even use any brake cleaner now because I think it's looking okay. Maybe just a little, just in case. Something like this is cheap and it works back fine. It's available in automobile stores and get them a bit less dirty. Okay, that's it. Now we're prepared to mount new brake pads. What we need to pay attention to is to not put any grease on the brake pads, including the grease from our hands. So some people use those special nitrile gloves. I don't like working with gloves, but I would just pay attention. And before you mount new brake pads, you could use that brake cleaner that I showed to clean the braking disc, or as it is usually referred to in the cycling jargon as rotor, for unknown reasons. Okay, I don't want to put any grease on this. Get it all out. Okay. Now we will use this because it comes with every pair of brake pads, and it's new, so that should go about here. Let's see how it goes. Something like this, and putting this one on top. Okay, that looks good. And this is the retaining pin for brakes and for brake calipers that use that system. It's provided with these pads, but here we will reuse this one. So now we need to put this back. I'm making sure to put some pressure so that this spring does not come off, and I need to replace these pads. And I'll just slide them in. Okay, they're inside. With these cooler fins, the only way to put them inside is from the top, obviously. So if this brake caliper were designed the other way, the brake pads would not have been compatible. Now I need to make sure to screw this in. You see where the threads are and where the threads are cut inside the brake caliper. There are no threads on the other side. So I'm going from the proper side and putting this inside, making sure to come through the hole in the spring there, and now I can just screw it in. I will now get a screwdriver. I want to screw it in all the way. Okay, now I'm making sure it's nice and tight, exerting pressure so that this doesn't come off and damage the screw. Okay, I think that's good. Now I'll put a retaining pin back in. You can put, as I said, you can use needle nose pliers for these tasks if your hands are not strong enough, or if this is a bit difficult and tricky, but here I think that I will be able to mount this using just hands. Okay, just trying to make it visible on camera. So aligning it. Okay, here I'm aligning it and pushing it. Okay, it's stuck. It's good. That's it. Now we will, before we mount everything back, I will just degrease the brake disc just in case. you can use also 96% alcohol. It's available in supermarkets and it's relatively cheap. That also works for degreasing and for cleaning. So we can use that as well. And we'll use some to dry this off. Okay, I think that's good enough. Now I will mount the wheel onto the frame, into the forks, before we mount the brake caliper. With some wheels, and especially in the rear, it could be difficult. You might need to mount the caliper first, but with this one it's fairly simple. And first I'm exerting pressure with my knee to make sure this is all the way up into the dropouts, so it's nicely aligned. And the best way to do this is with the bicycle on its wheels on the ground, but we won't take time on the video for that, and I'm quite used to doing it this way, so I think it's going to be okay. Now we have these bolts that hold this in place, the brake caliper, and I've already lubricated them with some anti-seize paste to prevent them from getting corroded onto the aluminium threads here inside the fork. And we will just slide this now over the disc gently and put the bolts, screwing them in gently to make sure they don't cross thread. Okay, that's one. Now the second. Screwing it almost all the way in, but I will not be tightening it. I want to leave some play here like this, and I will show why that is important. Okay, tightening it just enough to allow for that play. Do not leave too much play, but to allow for some. Okay, this one is a bit too tight. Okay, now it's good. Why did I do that? Because I wish to make sure that the calipers are aligned. For that, a simple way is to use a tool like this. I will probably post a link on Amazon so you can see the models and prices, but it's fairly simple. You have this like a handle and these two thin steel plates that make sure that the spacing between the tool and the brake pads is relatively even. And I want to double check that this is free from any grease or dirt. Okay, now what I will do is put this over the brake disc, slide it in between the brake caliper and the disc. Sometimes you will need to move the brake caliper a bit to the side if it gets stuck. Okay, now it's slid in, and now I will tighten the brake pistons, the brake caliper, but before that I will hold the brake pressed to get the pistons out to touch this. I might pump it a bit after replacing the pads and to get them all the way out. Now holding this brake lever firmly. I'm holding the brake lever firmly pulled, and I'm slowly tightening these one by one. I wish to tighten just by a quarter of a turn each, because if I tighten only one with a lot of force and the other one is loose, the whole brake caliper might tend to rotate a bit. So I'm doing it just one at a time, a little, so that they each put similar force on the brake caliper and so it doesn't get rotated. Okay, now the torque for this is definitely at least some 10 Newton meters. And so I will use a tool that provides me with a bit more leverage here. You can also use a torque wrench if you haven't got the feel for this. If you screw them too hard, you will strip the threads, and if you leave them too loose, they will become loose over time and you might have some problems with your brakes. Okay, this does not always work. We might get some brake rub after this, and in order to eliminate that, we would first have to check if there is any play in the disc, whether it's bent, so it needs a bit truing. And if the disc is okay, then we need to redo this procedure, sometimes even without using a tool like this for alignment, but by using a small, like a torch light battery run, and use just by eye, gauging it and slightly slowly loosen these bolts, then move it just a little bit to make sure it's aligned, then retighten them. So it's a bit more tedious process when this doesn't help, but this often helps. Now we'll give it a test and a spin and see how it goes. Okay, you can hear the brake rub. That's what I was talking about. So when that tool doesn't help, I try to do this manually. And so first I need to loosen this just a bit, not all the way, just so that I can work with that other tool that's a bit more convenient for me to use. And you might need some lighting or some background that provides a bit of light, and that is exactly what I will do now. Okay. This cannot probably be seen by camera, perhaps if you try from this or this angle, but one side disc is all the way to this side towards me, and on this side there's too much space, it's too close to this, so I need to move calipers a bit out towards me the way I'm here in the camera, and that's what I will do. Let's see. Yes, definitely. So try to make this a bit more loose. Alright, now I can move this by hand, probably. Yes. That looks a bit better. And I will try to tighten it just a bit. Now the lower one. Let's check. Okay, just a little bit. I need to loosen it a bit. By the tiniest amount. Okay. Now let's inspect visually. Looks better. Let's hear it. There's nothing to hear, which is good. I will now further tighten these one at a time, just a little, holding with my hand to make sure there's no movement. Alright. Alright. Now let's give it a spin. That's good. Cool. It looks like we made it. Now I will hold this pressed and just tighten this a bit further. Okay. Let's make another check. Great. All right, now a few things to note. When you're on the road and when you need to remove a wheel for any reason, if you're not using that through axle but using these like completely open dropouts to move the wheel out and in, you might get some minimal misalignment. and in order to, and you will have some disc brake rub. So in order to avoid it, you should place the bike on the ground, loosen the whatever holds the wheel. It's usually quick release pattern, but in this case it's a through axle with an adapter for these kinds of open-ended forks. Anyway, you loosen it, then you hold the brake lever while the bicycle is standing on its wheels, so this is pushed all the way in, and that will align it if it needs to be aligned just a little bit if it gets out of alignment, and then tighten after that. So that might help to eliminate disc brake if you didn't have any disc brake rub and you after replace a flat tire or something and mount the wheel back, you hear the brake rub. So make sure it's seated all the way in, and even if that doesn't help, then make sure it's seated all the way in with this loose. Hold the brake lever pushed and then tighten it. It usually helps. I'm not sure if I explained this properly in Tarzan English, but that is the procedure. Now we need to just make sure that these things that hold the brake hose in place are tightened, and then we can put the bike back on its wheels and give it a test ride and see how the new supersonic Shimano brake pads perform. Okay. For that we will need this. Okay, I've just created a problem for myself. Sorry for the noise, it's the neighbors, it's a garage, and you'll have to put up with it. I need to get the wheel out because it's in the way. Alright, put it aside, making sure not to put it against the disc. And now, let's see, unscrew this a bit, get this held in place, and then tighten it. Okay, now this one. If you have an Allen key with this kind of rounded part, it's convenient because it allows you to work at an angle, but it's not good for exerting any force, either when tightening or loosening. So when you need to torque it up or loosen it, use the part that is flat, straight. So I'm finishing up with that part. If you're not sure about the torque, with most of these tools, if you hold them like 1/3 of the way, you have no way of over tightening it unless your hands are super strong. So you can have a good feel of it. Okay, I think this is enough. And now we can put the wheel back and see if we get any disc brake rub, so we can demonstrate the procedure that I had explained just now. Okay, let's see. It's good. Lucky. Okay, move this out of the way. It's good. Now I usually like to make the check by pulling the brake lever a bit, so to see if there's any noise, because that means that one side is still too close. But this one looks okay. Only when I push it half the way to the end I can hear a bit of noise, because both pads are close to the disc, and that's okay, that's normal. So I think we've done this properly, and now we need to just tighten these bolts that we had previously loosened and give it a test ride. And I wish to thank you for watching this, and if you have any questions, it's super hot summer. If you have any questions, you can, or corrections or additions, you can use the comment sections below, and cheers.